Pirate Land, it's us again, fat and angry. He's fat and I'm angry, and that's just the way it is, so deal with it. Today we're going to be talking about movies and the process of acclimating them into a hoard.
Mostly my hoard. If you watched our last video, which we haven't uploaded yet, so no, you didn't, we were talking about movies a lot, and I think it was pretty apparent that I'm into horror movies. I mentioned Jason, I mentioned Michael Myers, I mentioned Pumpkinhead, and I probably mentioned somebody else along the way. Throughout my life, I've collected horror movies, and I've owned the same movies at several points from losing them, what have you not. And I'm trying to rebuild my collection. Now, I have all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. What I'm missing is the Freddy Nightmares TV series. And there was a documentary I was interested in getting called I Am Nancy. Now, there's another documentary out there called Never Sleep Again. I've seen this documentary. It's a good documentary, but it wasn't something I was initially interested in owning. But as a completionist, a problem came up. You see, I Am Nancy got re-released on Blu-ray as Never Sleep Again Part 2, I Am Nancy. So now I have to get Never Sleep Again, because I can't look at my shelf with missing movies.
The collector's lament. Always the case of there's always something that's always missing. And when it's complete, they just release something else, and now you have to get that too.
Pretty soon a new Hellraiser's coming out, and I have all the other films. But I have been really fixated on this because it was supposed to come out over a year ago. And in my fixation of this new Hellraiser, I forgot to check on some of the other franchises, and it turns out there's a Texas Chainsaw that came out that I was completely unaware of and completely missed.
When did this one come out?
Sometime early 2017, I believe. The name of the movie is called Leatherface, and it's supposed to be a prequel to the original film, if I'm remembering correctly.
That name sounds familiar, but I don't recall hearing about this movie either.
Yeah, well, a long time ago, the third Texas Chainsaw Massacre was called Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 3. So there might have been some confusion there as well.
I thought that was like All in the Family, because that one, like, if I remember correctly, that's the one where like it's a house in a bog. That's the one where that's the one where Leatherface has that speaking spell. When it shows the clown, he puts in food and it keeps like chastising him.
Yeah, his chainsaw it has embedded on the blade the saw his family. But anyway, so now when I go to order my Freddy Krueger movies that I don't have, I'm going to get both Never Sleep Again and I Am Nancy. Recently picked up the last two Jason movies I don't have, which was Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X, and I picked up a documentary called His Name Was Jason. After that, I'm probably going to get the Scarlet Box for the Hellraiser series. It contains the first three films, which I already have, but...
You don't have the Scarlet Box.
Well, it's not just the Scarlet Box. You see, Hellraiser 2...
Oh, this one. Yeah, you told me about this, but explain it to people who are not aficionados of the series like you are.
Alright, so the original VHS tape, there's a scene on the back where it shows Pinhead and the female Cenobite wearing doctor's scrubs. This scene is not in the movie. And I've been curious about it, and for years I have been trying to find a version of the movie that has it. I actually ordered a copy that supposedly had it, and it was seized by customs on its way from China to my house.
Because this is why we can't have nice things.
Yeah, and I've heard rumors about what's contained in the scene. If you've watched the movie, there's a scene later in the movie where you see Chatter, and he's got a different mask on. You can see his eyes and his teeth are less pronounced. And supposedly there was a scene that got cut where Pinhead tells him for his loyal services he will be giving back the gift of his sight, and he pulls the wires out of Chatter's mouth, which lets the flesh fold forward, and he can see again.
I can imagine the smell from like all of the ick in between the folds of his skin would have been rank.
Yeah, and while the surgery scene's not in there, it does have the scene with the Cenobites wearing the medical scrubs, and there's a elevator chase scene with Chatter that wasn't in the original version of Part 2. And since I don't have that scene, I'm going to buy the Scarlet Box just so I can have that little bit of footage.
Assuming it doesn't get seized by some sort of customs or something.
Yeah, well, it shouldn't be a problem. The Scarlet Box was released in America, but
Yes, but there's always state customs.
that's true. And I
just like, just a state patrolman comes up to your house. We heard you were trying to get this. We managed to catch it before the shipping can get here. Just to let you know, don't try that again. You'll just be wasting your money. And he just walks away.
that would be my luck. The finding this scene has literally been my white whale of movie collecting. And once I get through with Hellraiser, I'm probably just going to take the easy route with Phantasm and buy the new box set that has all 5 of the movies. I've been really looking forward to the 5th one coming out, and it took a really long time, and I'm glad they managed to get it out before Angus Scrimm passes.
Or passed.
Yeah, I don't know if he's dead yet or not.
Oh yeah, he died like 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay, so yeah, they managed to squeeze it out in time.
I think they filmed all the scenes with him because he's been dead for a while.
Yeah, they managed to finish it. And from there, it'll probably be Pumpkinhead. I don't have any of those movies, and I think they're up to 4 now. But again, I've been kind of hounding over this new Hellraiser, so I might have missed one that got released, and I don't know about it. But
probably a Sci-Fi Channel original movie.
Possibly.
Did they buy the rights to it, or was it just for like?
As far as I know, they just decided to release it on Sci-Fi. But I didn't really look too much into the history of it. I just thought, hey, more Pumpkinhead, great. Not enough.
Well, I try to get as much movies as I can myself. The problem is that I don't collect a particular type of movie. Like, I don't collect all of like this genre or that genre so much as I just collect whatever movies I've enjoyed. Which sucks because often I forget what movies that I want, and then I forget what movies that I want and that I want to buy, and then realize I've already bought them like 3 years ago, and like the DVD was like stuck under like a book or something that I just didn't see. It's like, fuck, now I have 2 versions of it.
Oh, it's even worse. Is like you buy a movie that you know you've wanted, and then you go take it to your shelf, you start organizing, and like you find a copy of it, and it's still sealed in the package. I've had that happen to me a few times.
Well, let's see, if there's any movies, if there's anything I'd want to collect, it'd be all the Mobile Suit Gundam stuff. I love the original Mobile Suit Gundam series, and you've heard me go on and on and on. I could talk about that for hours.
Yeah.
And we'll probably end up covering that in a video or 2 or more. Depends if Fats here can stop me.
I'll try. I'll try.
But because I think, God, who owns the rights to that? I think it's like Namco Bandai. Well, at least they got the rights for the video games, and I think Bandai has the rights for the American release. And those fuckers really know how to squeeze every goddamn last penny out of you. It's like, oh, you want this, don't you? Well, let's see. This normally would sell for about $10, but for you, $69.95. Because we know it's you, and we know you love it so much. We know you'll pay for it, too. And that's if you can find the shit. I mean, God, they're just releasing now. They just started making a couple years back, and they're actually still in the process of making them, these short films. Each one's about an hour long, maybe more, based on the released Mobile Suit Gundam Origins, which was another manga artist's take on the original Mobile Suit Gundam. They didn't change a whole lot. They changed some of the stuff that I don't exactly agree with because it kind of makes things a moot point. But it does clear up some of the geography problems in the original movie. Like in the original movie / series, well, obviously Mobile Suit Gundam takes place in space. And in the original series, the main spaceship that the show follows enters Earth's atmosphere. It's trying to get to Jaburo, which is in Brazil, and they end up off course, and they end up smack dab in the middle of enemy territory in North America, and they can't get to Brazil because of this giant, super strong anti-aircraft defense system that's essentially right around the Mexican border, I think. And so they have to go around. In the original movie, they make their way along the Midwest. Then they have a big confrontation in New York, which doesn't make any sense. If you're heading west along, like, the center of the U.S., heading towards the California Oregon coastline, you wouldn't end up in New York. It doesn't make sense. And then after they have this big confrontation in New York, they end up like going across the Pacific and ending up in like the East Asian coast, which once again doesn't make any fucking sense. When they redid the series in the new manga, they go and the big confrontation takes place in Los Angeles, which makes a lot more fucking sense. And from Los Angeles, they go along the peninsula down to South America, then to Brazil, and then they go along to Asia, Europe, and then I think it's like Scotland. It's where they end up going back into space from there. But anyway, so they fixed that. They made some stuff worse. They made some stuff better. However, this was the first time they actually went and did the backstory on the series, which I've been dying to see. But the problem is, I can't fucking find anywhere to buy these fucking things. I'm wondering, are they going to release them? Because apparently I've seen bits where they've dubbed them into English online, but like you look on YouTube, you find little clips and shit, and usually like the quality's bad because it's like they won't fucking release it in stores where you can buy it, but they'll keep you from watching it for free, which I don't fucking understand.
Yeah. Well,
have you ever had instances like that where like you want to see something so bad, but like you can't buy it, you can't find it, and no matter where you turn online, like these companies like fucking clamp down with like the copyright strikes and shit like that?
Actually, yeah, me and my wife, we wanted to watch Hocus Pocus of all things, and we tried to watch it on YouTube, which didn't work out, and so eventually we just ended up renting it on Amazon for like $2 to finally watch it, and I had fun with it. I'd certainly like to own it someday, but I never see it in stores.
I used to see it all the time in stores, but this was like back, like when Blockbuster was still around. You'd always see that fucker at Blockbuster.
One of the things I kind of miss about Blockbuster being around is like whenever they sell off their inventory, horror movies are usually the first to go, and they sell them for pennies on the dollar. And nowadays, some of the rarer horror movies actually get pretty expensive. I was looking into some of the prices I'm going to have to pay to fill in the holes in my collection. And I decided I want to get the Maniac Cop trilogy, and most of those are running $50 to $75 a piece. And
Who the fuck likes Maniac Cop that much?
Not me. Yeah. It was a good movie, not that good.
I think I saw one of them. I think it was two. Did two take place in like an office building?
Honestly, it wasn't until recently that I saw the first one, and I haven't been able to see any of the sequels.
If it wasn't Maniac Cop, it was something else.
There's one called Psycho Cop. It might have been that one.
It might have been a Psycho Cop movie. It was the second one because it was years ago. I saw this back on like Showtime or HBO or something like that, and like it shows like this serial killer guy who's a cop, and his dashboard is covered in like body parts and gore, and he's like you see him like like moving all this horror around to get to his police scanner.
Well, the name of the villain was Bruce Cordell.
I don't remember that fucker's name. I don't even remember what he looks like. He was like some dude dressed like a cop, and that's about as much as I fucking remember.
Okay, well, like Bruce Cordelli's kind of zombified, so if the main
I don't
cop
think he
wasn't.
looked like a zombie.
Okay, that might have been Psycho Cop then, or some other movie about a cop asshole. I found a box set of like movies about jackass cops. It didn't have Maniac Cop, unfortunately, but it had like Psycho Cop and some other B horror films of the time.
God, there was just like horror movies are just going to be something that like always gets pumped out regularly.
Yeah,
There will never be a time when there's like scarcity in horror movies.
oh, they'll try anything. There's literally horror movies about demonic fridges. It's a
Deathbed, the bed that eats people. I remember Patton Oswalt talking about that one on a comedy special.
yeah.
And then what was the one like Demon Tire?
There was one I saw called Rubber, and
Yeah, that one.
it was about a tire that gained psychic powers and sentience, and it basically just rolled around and concentrated on something until it exploded. And
That's about the long and short of it, isn't it?
yeah, it was a fascinating movie. I'm not going to say it was good, but man, you just had to know where this was going.
It's a tire. Watch it roll on.
Yeah, at the time I had almost commissioned Confused Matthew to do a review of it because I really wanted to see what he would think of this thing. Um, hell, he's a friend on my Facebook. I might give him a try and see if he'll take a
I
look
remember,
at.
like, I stopped following his website because like, he kept changing the format of like the video players, and it just became too much of a pain in the ass to deal with them.
Yeah,
And B, he had admitted that he was not going to be doing it for much longer at the time, which I thought was disappointing. It's like I may not agree with someone's review on a game or a movie, but if you present your argument in a logical and or entertaining manner, I'll still watch it. Like I mean, it's like there's a lot of movies that Confused Matthew like shat on that I like and that I disagree with him on. But if he makes a convincing argument, it's like you can't really fault him for that. It's like, all right, he didn't like it because of this, but I still like it, so there.
yeah.
I'm not gonna say, well, fuck you, Matthew. You don't like the shit that I like, so you're an asshole.
Yeah, like I really love the Hellraiser series, and I know that it's been going downhill since 3, and it hasn't really picked itself up. But I still love it anyways, and you can tell me everything wrong with the movie, and I will probably agree with you that, yeah, that's terrible. Still love it.
Now, I just remembered something I was attempting to collect. And I really, really should have tried looking this up before before I started on it. But I got this on a whim. When One Piece was like really gaining traction. When they started showing it on Cartoon Network, I found like the first DVD box set, and I picked it up, and then I found another one, and I picked it up, and they were relatively cheap as far as like anime box sets go. Because one thing that is not cheap and that never will be cheap is anime, because it only comes from one fucking place, and that is Japan. And the only reason it gets localized is because of Western companies looking to fucking squeeze every last fucking penny out of poor fucks like me. It's like, oh, you're either going to get it from us or you're not going to get it at all. Sure, try to import it. You won't be able to understand it. And they wonder why fan subs are so fucking popular. It's because it's either that or you pay out your fucking nose. But, and like I got quite a few of the box sets, and like I kept seeing more and more. I'm like, shit, how many of these are there? And it wasn't until I really started getting into One Piece that I realized that this show's been going on since like the 90s, and they're still making new episodes. It seems like every other week there's a new episode of that show, and they're still making new episodes, like now. So they're like at episode like 800 and something, and I'm like, there is not a job that I could fucking get that would give me enough money to be able to buy all the fucking box sets. And that's assuming that they keep making the DVD box sets in English in the States. because because like shows come and go and like their popularity waxes and wanes.
Yeah.
And eventually, like if it becomes unprofitable for like a Western company to keep like printing out these DVDs, if they're not getting bought up, if like too many of them end up in half-price books, they're not going to keep producing them. So you'll just see like a fucking like DVD like box set series that just fucking stops for no reason when they're still making new episodes in Japan.
I got to episode 300. Then they gave up on me.
Now, like I gave up right about the time, for those of you who actually watched the show, right about the time they got to the Grand Line. When they get to the big, I forget the name of it, the big fucking town that sits at the entrance of the Grand Line. That's about where I stopped in terms of collecting the DVDs, because like at that point I was like, I'm gonna have to be selling body parts if I want to keep this up, and I can't fucking do this.
For a while, I was collecting all the superhero movies, but they're just coming out so rapidly.
And they're coming out so expensively because now Disney owns most all of them. And
Yeah.
Disney has a thing of like, if you like Disney, you better start fucking chilling out some fucking cash.
Well, I didn't have a problem buying the new Blu-rays when during like Marvel's first and second phase. But in phase 3, it's just, it keeps hitting rapidly, and I'm also collecting the DC stuff, or was, and it just got too much. I'm still going to watch all the movies, but as far as collecting them, just right now, it's not on my to-do list.
Just to date this video, I know that Black Panther comes out in like what, a month? I think it comes out in February.
Soon.
They've been running trailers and teaser trailers for like the new Infinity War, and they've like I've been dying to like get every scrap of information on the new Deadpool movie. But the only reason I even know that there was a Black Panther coming out was that when I went to go see the last time I went to the movie theater, I saw a poster for it. I'm like, holy shit, they're making a Black Panther movie, because I hadn't seen any commercials for it. I hadn't seen any ads for it on YouTube. I hadn't seen any like fucking animated banners and shit on that in any websites that like that shit you can't seem to get rid of. Is like I hadn't heard anyone talking about it. I hadn't heard like even like Kevin Smith. He's got this podcast with a friend of his called Fat Man on Batman, and like they talk a lot about like the comic book movies and stuff like that. And I hadn't even heard them mention it until just recently, about the same time that I saw the poster. It's like once I saw the poster, then suddenly I started hearing information trickle in from the internet. I'm like, why the fuck haven't they been running this media blitz? Because I thought that they were really going to push Black Panther really fucking hard. Because like man, when they introduced him in that one Captain America movie, Civil War, like they made him to be just like a fucking badass that could not be stopped.
It was pretty awesome.
I mean, dude was chasing down cars. Dude was going toe to toe with like the other Marvel characters. He was wrecking shit with his adamantium armor, no, not adamantium, vibranium armor and vibranium claws, which as far as I know in the continuity is one of the few materials stronger than adamantium.
Yep.
And it's like that's his like he's kind of like a Captain America character. Well, whereas Captain America is superhuman in his abilities, Black Panther I think is supposed to be like at the absolute peak of human capability in terms of like strength, speed, endurance, all that shit. But he's got that armor and a lot of his equipment's made out of vibranium, which just essentially means that you can't really fucking hurt him.
Yeah.
And I think he also has like some magical arts from like.
If I'm not mistaken, he does have some mystic abilities in the comic books. I don't know if those are going to translate into the movies or not. It's actually been a really long time since I've read any comic books, so I'm not positive in that regard. But I do believe he had some like shamanistic magic.
I know that they had like a Black Panther like TV show on BET like years ago. And I was watching the first episode and it was just like very poorly flash animated guys and they were just like African tribesmen. And I'm like, wow, this looks not just badly animated. This just looks bad. Is like I'm not gonna watch like a Marvel thing which just shows like a bunch of African tribesmen. I'm sorry. It's like if I want to see Black Panther, I want to see Black Panther. I don't want to see like the origins of Black Panther from like pre-colonial days.
Yeah.
Like before even the fucking British showed up. Or no, it wasn't the British were the first ones. I think it was like the Dutch or the Indies.
I
Who were
got,
the first ones that like meandered into like Africa and like just started fucking shit up for everybody?
you got me. I don't really keep up with a
I
lot
know
of
that like
history.
the big I know that the big faction that was fucking things up in Africa was the Dutch West Indies Company, which I think was like a collaboration between India and the Dutch. But I've never really done studies on that.
Yeah, no, I save most of my brain power for Dungeons and Dragons, so you got me. Uh,
Let's see, what other stuff have I tried to collect? I tried to collect a lot of almost any type of cartoon show I grew up with. And even some of the ones that I haven't, just so I could get my hands on them. Case in point, you sold me your copy of the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, the TV show.
yeah, yeah, I found a box set that comes with a little mini adventure, the stats for the characters, and like some of their magic items. And I bought it solely just to get that book because I didn't really care about the cartoon series. It wasn't my thing. But yeah, I just needed the book, so I got half my money back by selling him the DVDs.
Now, Pro Jared recently did a review of that animated series, and I never really was able to catch it as often as I did. That was like from a long time ago. I think the series started like in '81, and I wasn't born till '83. But I do remember seeing at least one episode, at least. It was probably a rerun. I remember seeing it on CBS on a Saturday morning, and I remember it being right before this other cartoon, which was like an animated version of like a kid's book. But yeah, it was like a God. I wish I could get my. I wish they would release like Reboot on DVD. That was a fun show. And like I got Sonic the Hedgehog, the Saturday morning cartoon edition. I got Chippendales Rescue Rangers. I got Tailspin, Ducktales. Just like any old cartoons from like the '80s and '90s that I grew up watching. I try to get my fucking hands on them. Here's one. I went to a pawn shop with another friend of ours and found for $1 Jace and the Wheeled Warriors, the complete series. Now that is one I don't believe I ever got to see when I was a kid, but I remember seeing the opening for it because we do a lot of we like to go down the YouTube hole quite often over here, and so we found like best cartoon openings, like the 50 best cartoon openings from like the '80s and '90s, and like a lot of those cartoons I never saw, like the Mighty Orbots, but like in one of them was like a Jason the World Warriors. I don't believe I ever saw that one. But I saw that there is like $1 for the whole fucking series. I'm sold.
Yeah.
Managed to pick up the entirety of Skeleton Warriors on box set. I know that Jim Sterling loves using them. Whenever he goes on his tirade, he'll do a cutaway to the Skeleton Warriors. I remember that show. I found out later, I think it was based on a comic, or they based a comic off the show. I don't know which one came first. But I remember that show being just like crazy because like the skeleton warriors were skeletons and they were undead, and like every time you shoot them they would just break apart and reform. Whereas all of the skeletons themselves would use these weapons that would like strip the flesh from you and convert you into a skeleton like them. And like I remember one episode where like one of the main characters actually did get shot and turned into a skeleton. And like I think it was a woman, and I think she was like teasing the other characters, like saying like it's so much better, just join us, just like leave the light side and join the dark or whatever the fucking equivalent of like good and evil was on that fucking show. But that's kind of fucked up when like the skeleton of your friend and allies like fucking talking shit on you while trying to like deflesh you as well with their de-meat guns. Sarge, where'd all your meat go?
My meats.
One show I'd love to fucking get on DVD would be Centurions. I fucking loved that show as a kid.
You know, with the Centurions, when I was a kid, like, every kid I knew had at least one of the figures and none of the others. It was always
Because
just...
they were fucking expensive is why.
Yeah, it was always just one of them. I was the only kid I knew that had more than one. And it was only kind of. I had the green guy,
Max Ray.
Okay, Max Ray.
Underwater sea specialist.
And then one of the villains, there was like a spaceship attachment he could get for him. And I had the spaceship attachment, and it kind of had like a face on it. So I just kind of pretended it was another character. And yeah, everybody else, they just had one of the figures. Nobody had the bad guys, so I was the closest to having one of the bad guys. And that's when we play with them. The figures were awesome, but nobody had the villains, so we couldn't do much with them.
It's like that show, like most all cartoons of the 80s and early 90s, was just a vehicle to sell toys. But fuck, did they make that show entertaining.
Yeah.
It's like, we made a bunch of robots so you can watch them get blown the fuck up.
Yay!
Sign my ass up. I'm going to sit down and watch this and turn my brain off.
I'm going to eat cereal all day.
I'm not fat, you're fat. You're the fat one. That's because you eat too much cereal. That's why we got kicked out of high school. If any good came out of that movie, nothing but trouble. It was Bobo and Little Devil.
Oh, that movie is all kinds of awesome. That's a movie where you guys just need to take a shot every time somebody says "what the fuck" and see how dead you are by the end of the film.
I love, like, what was it, like the Nostalgia Critic? No, it wasn't Nostalgia Critic. It was Red Letter Media. They did a review of that, and like they spliced in scenes from like the dinner scene with the judge and his family to Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
It showed the bits from Nothing But Trouble where like the judge and his family are like eating the hot dogs like very morbidly, and then they'd cut to
the girl screaming,
like the girl screaming, like tied to the chair, like trying to get away. And they did such a good job with it. It's like it was like, man, that needs to be a movie. Take those two movies and mash them up. Dan Aykroyd's still alive, and you can get another fat character actor to replace John Candy. God, I miss John Candy.
Too many fat guys have died. We need more. Somebody start feeding these actors.
Give them a sandwich now and then. They'll thank you for it. Patton Oswalt needs to be in more movies. I'm sure he needs the money. But let's see, what else? What other movies was I collecting? I collect some horror movies, though not nearly to the extent that you do, and not like as tenaciously. Like, I'm not going to sit there and buy every single goddamn fucking Phantasm movie. I only want 1 and 2. I have 1, I need 2. 2 is the one I've never seen on DVD. I've seen the first one on DVD, I've seen the third one and the fourth one on DVD. Never seen the second one on DVD. I know you have it on VHS. We saw it on VHS years ago.
I have it on a burned DVD somewhere.
I don't think that counts, though.
Yeah, for me, it's not good enough. It just gives me something to watch while I collect the real deal. I never own a burned movie without the intention of buying the real deal.
That's the thing. Like, if you don't make the movies, you have to get them one way or the other. I mean, like, I blame the DVD printing companies for that.
Well, I've actually owned the second Phantasm on official DVD before, but then my house burnt down and I lost a lot of my movies. So I got a lot of burnt DVDs to just kind of fill the void while I picked up my life.
Burnt DVD to replace your burnt DVDs.
Yep.
2 definitions for the same word.
The one I had hell tracking down was actually the third one because at the time it was only on VHS. And it was never made for public release, so you could only get a rental copy. And if a store is going to sell you a rental copy, it's going to be at least $100. if not more. Like the cheapest I could find it was 300, and at the time, I had no responsibilities, my own place. I was willing to pay it, but the place wasn't willing to order it for me.
Dirtbags.
Yeah, but it's been released on DVD and Blu-ray since then, so I'll be able to get a copy. But like I said, for that one, I'm just going to go ahead and buy the box set, get all 5 of them at once.
Yeah, why not?
When I originally started collecting horror movies, I actually didn't like collecting box sets. To me, it felt kind of like cheap, but like going out and hunting each individual copy was the sign of a true collector.
Fuck that. That requires effort.
Well, I was willing to put the effort in back then, but
Back then.
yeah, nowadays it really takes up a lot less shelf space. It's a cheaper investment. To me, it's the way to go at this point. Usually, when you buy these box sets, if you actually care enough about the series, they're going to have like some sort of behind-the-scenes special features where you can find out some pretty interesting history. And the fact that I'm actually willing to buy documentaries on these series, that's a pretty good indicator that those kinds of featurettes.
To be fair, I've seen some documentaries that are better than the actual movies they're documenting.
Yeah. There was one I was watching on horror movies. I forget what it was called, but it basically shows like Freddy Krueger's claw tearing through an American flag on the cover, and it was a history about horror films.
I think I saw that one. I think it was on Netflix or something.
Yeah, I think
or it was on HBO or something.
I think it's called Nightmares in Red, White, and Blue, and it's a really, really good documentary. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it. If you're a fan of horror movies, if you're not, you're probably not going to get much out of it. But expand your brain.
One collection I do have completed is the original Night of the Living Dead series. I have the original one, the black and white, though it's not in its own case. It's part of like one of those giant 50 movie, like 80 horror movies or 50 horror movies, because poor George A. Romero, like, you know, his first big breakout film became public domain because he didn't know how to copyright the thing. And so that's like whenever they do like one of those like, you know, like box sets of horror movies, it's always like
it's always on there.
Yeah, it's always on there because it doesn't cost anyone anything to put it on there. It's public domain.
Yeah. I've bought so many horror movie box sets, like the 20, 30, 50, 100 movies, and 9 times out of 10, it's on there.
There's like another game you can play with those. Count how many movies have Tor Johnson in it.
I usually get through about half the collection, and
he wasn't just in Ed Wood films; he was in other things.
Yeah, Ed Wood. There's a guy I need to collect some of his films. They've got quite the notoriety around them.
Well, I think like, you know, like they're starting to get popular again, so I think you may have a hard time getting them now.
Yeah, it can't be worse than Maniac Cop. Fuck me, who loves Maniac Cop that much?
And let's see, so I got that one. I got the remake of Night of the Living Dead, which, in my opinion, is like we talked about that before. That one is superior in pretty much every way, shape, and form. I got the original Dawn of the Dead, the original Day of the Dead, and even Land of the Dead, which, in my opinion, is the weakest of all of them. But still, I have it.
Yeah.
I don't have any of the Revenge of the or the Return of the Living Dead, or like. Or what was the ones that like the other guy who worked with George A. Romero on Now Living Dead when he went out and like he did his own branch?
I think it's Return of the Living Dead, and
they're
kind of more comedies than they are horror.
Well, the first one was like an attempt to make like an actual horror movie, but it was just too schlocky. And the second one, they gave up all fucking pretenses for that and just turned it into a fucking comedy.
Yeah.
I mean, there's literally a bit where like they find out the only way to kill those zombies, which up to this point, the zombies are completely unkillable. You can cremate them and it just makes ash, which infects other people and other things with the zombification. You can even nuke them and it just makes, once again, more ash, which creates more zombies. And like you can cut them up and each body part has a mind of its own and works independently. You can destroy, damage, and move the brain. That doesn't stop them or even slow them down. They're just undefeatable. And they don't need muscles. Like you see like literally skeletons coming out of the ground with like no means of locomotion, no muscular tissue, and like they're fucking running around and biting people and spreading the zombie shit. But in the second one, when they find out that the only way to defeat the zombies is to electrocute them, and when they electrocute a bunch of them, you literally see a guy or a zombie dressed up as Michael Jackson jump from the foreground into, or like from behind the camera to the foreground, and start doing like the shaking bit. I guess because like they thought Michael Jackson's dancing was a bit like having an epileptic fit at the time.
Yeesh.
But yeah, it's like so. I'm not trying to collect those movies.
One set of horror movies that I have this strange weakness for. I don't know why, but I am completely vulnerable to it. Is shitty shark films. I
You and
love
James Rolfe.
I love me some shitty shark. If I'm surfing through Netflix and there's a shitty shark film I haven't seen, I'm watching it. I don't care if I'm late to work and get fired. I'm glued to the TV and I will go through it, and no matter how horrible it is, I will watch it to the end. And I don't know why this is, but that is like my horror movie weakness. For all the things that I love, a terrible shark flick is just my kryptonite.
I can't abide by stuff like that. It's like you have a love of like shitty movies that I will never be able to appreciate or like empathize with.
Well, where I think it started was me and my friends were going to see a lot of movies that I was really hyped up for, and I just ended up leaving the theater super disappointed. And we were going to the movies a lot. It was a regular thing we'd do at least once a week.
Back when movies didn't cost like $10 to get in there.
Yeah, but you still spent $10 on popcorn and stuff.
That's how they get you.
Yep. And then Snakes on a Plane starts getting advertised, and people are shitting on this movie before it even comes out. And I'm taking a look at this, and I think to myself, it's going to be a schlocky action flick with Samuel L. Jackson doing a bunch of one-liners. The bar is not higher than this. I can go into this theater with those expectations, and there's a chance I will enjoy it more than the bar I have set. And I go and I watch it, and I had a good time. It's not a good movie, but it was a fun popcorn flick. And I was just able to shut my brain off and have fun with it. And I think that's when, for me, that I was able to just... I can identify a terrible film as opposed to a terrible film that's good because of its terribleness. I've got some horror movies that are just awful, and not in any sort of way that are charming. But then I can watch something like Sharknado and have fun because it's a kind of turn off your brain movie and just enjoy the ride.
Now, Sharknado, the only way I was ever able to actually watch this turd was to watch it at the theaters with the riff tracks guy doing a riff on it, and they tore into that movie pretty good. And like it was up until the end. They start like, because like when it just becomes all action and shit, it's like the jokes kind of like start slowing down, and that's like when the film starts dragging itself down on its own merits, and like not even the jokes can save it. But I've had a couple of shit movies saved for me with riff tracks, like Birdemic. I would never be able to sit through that garbage fire without the riff tracks going. That movie is just grade A shit.
Yeah, that's one of those movies that it's not even charming in its awfulness.
Like Ed Wood would have looked at that and he would have punched the director in the mouth.
Yeah, there's not much to say about it. It's just bad. And there's this one horror movie I got. My dad bought me this box set, not knowing who it was or what it was. Just it was horror movies, and I probably didn't have them. And I think the name of the film's The Dark Lady. And uh, they have like this really cryptic voice at the beginning talking about like I think it's Saint John who got all the snakes out of Ireland or something like that. And then it cuts to this girl in like just really bad filmography. It looks like they took an 8 millimeter camera and tried to restore it. Uh, has this lady talking about how she's recently married, happy with her sex life, and she's kind of parading around half naked. She goes outside, gets bit by a snake, and then she starts having weird dreams. And by weird dreams, like, she wakes up in a bathtub full of blood or something like that, but nothing really actioning or shocking. It's mostly just her walking up and down the stairs, either half naked or whole naked, and being in her bed, tossing and turning naked or half naked. And every now and then she carries like a plate of raw meat upstairs, and they never explain what's going on with that until like the very
Feeding
end.
Grandpa.
The very end.
He likes his raw beef.
Actually, I think it's supposed to be her husband that she's feeding the raw beef. And then, like, in the middle of feeding him the raw beef while he's wearing all this weird bondage gear, she suddenly grows fangs and bites his neck. And then it's just a montage of her biting people and blood spraying all over her. And there's nothing interesting about it. Nothing you can make fun of. It's just terrible. And I took a look at this box set my dad got me and noticed the same actress was in all four of the movies. And they were all directed by the same guy. Did a little bit of internet research and realized I don't need to watch the rest of those films. Sorry, Dad, I love you, but
Not that
that was a bad buy.
There are limits to how much I love you. You wish I loved you that much.
I don't love you enough to finish the films on their own merit. If, you get put in a jigsaw trap or something, I'll go ahead and bite the bullet. But you owe me pizza afterwards.
A lot of it. Like truckloads.
Yeah, you like kicked out of CC's.
Now let's see, what else do I collect in terms of movies? Holiday specials that I grew up with. Fuck, have I been like trying to get my hands on those?
Yeah, every Black Friday you leave with an armful.
Well, like is like if I know it's there, I will turn a fucking Walmart or Best Buy inside out looking for that shit. It's because I don't know what it is nowadays. Like I've tried watching modern like holiday specials. I don't know if it's because I've gotten older and I don't have like the young sparkling eyes of a child, or at least not in my head. But they just none of these more recent holiday specials have done anything for me. You can't beat the stuff like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the Peanuts Christmas, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and like some of my favorite ones are like the Halloween ones, like the Garfield Halloween special. Halloween is Grinch Night, which has some really fucking cringy songs, but has one of the best like LSD bad trip sequences you will ever see in a kid's anything.
They really need to make a theme park around the Eucharia cart.
Or like the paraphernalia wagon.
That's the one, yeah.
I've told myself if I ever get like a van or like a minivan or something to that effect, I'm going to name it the paraphernalia wagon. Because most people don't know what paraphernalia means anymore. They're probably going to think it means like dildos or something. Then you have like, the self-righteousness feeling you get like when you correct them on being stupid.
Yeah, well, you could put dildos in there if you wanted to.
Well, that depends on like what kind of paraphernalia you need for what task.
Yeah, well, I think just like you have a crate of dildos of various sizes, shapes, colors, and species, and you have them in a loose crate that's not glued together very well, and you just forget to lock the doors on the back of your paraphernalia van, and you go down the highway at 60 miles an hour and let the thing just slide out and crash, and explosion of dildos all over the highway.
I don't need rumors like that following me around in my life.
Oh, but think of the votes your mom will get.
Now, no, we don't talk about that kind of stuff. now, no, something I'd rather do is just randomly drop a bunch of fucking caltrops from the back of my vehicle onto the open road, just to see what kind of shenanigans happen behind me that I can watch in my rearview mirror.
Oh,
Just be driving along the freeway at like 70 miles an hour. Suddenly, caltrops. Have fun with that, everyone behind me. But anyway, so like I've been trying to track down like all of these holiday specials, particularly the ones I grew up with. Like in terms of the Christmas ones, there's one I saw not when I was a little kid. I saw this one more when I was a teenager because I guess because it was so old they didn't show it until just recently. But it was the Mr. Magoo's A Christmas Carol, and that one was interesting because it's like from the '60s. I think that one's from like '67 or something when they did that. But that one, of course, it's Mr. Magoo. Everyone should fucking know who Mr. Magoo is, even though he's a very old cartoon character. Like I think people still use that reference, referring to blind people as Mr. Magoo. But like it has a lot of the language they use sounds like the language from the original book that that they do the play based off of. I'm like, wow, it's just I don't know if it's the actual language from the book. I do need to look that up because I've never actually read the book all the way through. But I imagine like it's an old English story, so it probably has a lot of old English style writing. But of course, like the basics and like some of the old classics. Like I love the Rankin and Bass stop motion shit, like A Year Without Santa Claus, and Santa Claus is Coming to Town, and like stuff like that. And of course, the Halloween ones because Halloween's one of my favorite holidays. That's one thing I like about like the fall and winter. You get some of my favorite holidays all lined up in a row: Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas. Just bam, bam, bam. You get one every month for the next 3 months. That's when let the good times roll. It's just a shame that where we live, fall doesn't start until the end of November, and winter doesn't start until Christmas or sometime after.
Yeah.
There's been plenty of times I can remember where Christmas was walking out and sweating in your shorts weather.
Yeah, for me, it always seems like February is the coldest month of the year, which we're getting into soon. So, uh,
Actually, January for me is the coldest month because by February it's already warming up.
well,
It's like spring lasts from like February 15th until February 25th when summer kicks in like a raging alcoholic, like attacking his family on a bender.
well, like February for me, uh, and maybe it's just because like the weather won't make up its fucking mind. You'll have days where it's super cold and then it's hot and then it's cold again and then it's rainy and cold and then hot all in the same day.
Like you'll get a cold front and it'll get down to 50 something degrees. By the next day it's 80. By the third day it's fucking 98 degrees with like 1,000% humidity. Then the next cold front comes in and it's down to 50 again.
Yeah, so for me it's just the most miserable month of the year. So
You're
maybe not the
literally
coldest.
you're seeing rocks shatter from thermal shock from the constant shift between hot and cold.
Yeah, like the streets in Corpus are terrible, but in February that's when it really starts kicking up the cracks and the potholes.
Yeah, the streets may be terrible, but the people are so much worse.
Yeah.
Corpus, it's a nice place to live if not for the people.
Well, that was when I was living on my own and initially collecting horror movies. I didn't really have to deal with the people. The only time I dealt with people was at work, and then when I spent half my paycheck at half price buying anything that was a horror movie.
I'm wondering, was your collecting out of attempting to collect this particular genre, or just buying every fucking horror genre thing you could get?
Well,
because if you're buying every horror movie, eventually you're going to get all the Nightmare on Elm Streets and all the Friday the 13th and all the other stuff.
Well, when I first started collecting horror movies, I was mostly going after basically the slasher genres that had done 4 or more movies. Like I guess you could think of Leatherface, Freddy Krueger, Jason, and Michael Myers as like the four big ones. And then,
The four horsemen of, like, the hacking up teenagers.
yeah, and then you kind of got some spread out there with like Ghostface from the Scream series, Fisherman from the Know What You Did Last Summer, Candyman, things like that. So it just kind of started off with anything that at least had a trilogy. And eventually I couldn't just find those kinds of titles. So it was like, well, this horror movie looks interesting, this movie looks interesting. And I didn't really have a whole lot to spend my money on. So before I knew it, it was just like, I don't have this one, so I'm going to buy it. And I would buy enough movies that I could watch them all up until my next paycheck, pay my rent, go buy all the horror movies and sci-fi again. And so it really broadened like my horizon for the horror and not just sticking with those well-known slashers. But what is funny though is even back then when I was collecting horror movies, I didn't own a single Child's Play and I never watched any of the Child's Plays.
Oh, I used to watch those all the time on like USA Up All Night and Joe Bob Briggs' Monster Vision. I'd never seen the original one until I was in college. But as a kid, I'd seen the second one so many times. It was one of my favorite horror movies because that final confrontation that they have that wasn't My Buddy. That was the actual toy that like went down the shitter after.
Yeah, the Good Guy dolls.
Yeah, the Good Guy doll, the Good Guy Factory. It's like that's how you do a finale in a horror movie. God damn it.
Yeah. But,
it's like they killed him over the course of 30 minutes.
yeah. But yeah, I never watched any of the Child's Plays because just visually, to me, there was nothing scary looking about Chucky. So I didn't even give the movies a try. And it wasn't until recently, because of Netflix, that I did, because I watch a lot of horror movies, and so it gives me suggestions. And like every bar of suggestion had both Curse of Chucky and Cult of Chucky.
Well, because like those are really the only ones you can see on Netflix. They don't have the original ones, to my knowledge.
Yeah, it's just those two right now. But every single suggestion bar, there'd be like 20 suggestion bars, all of them had both those movies. And finally, it's like, you know what? I've never given this movie a fair shot. So I watched both of them, and I was really impressed. And I have this one coworker, and we're always talking about what movies we've watched recently. And I told him about it, and he's like, "Oh, so you liked them? Well, I have the box set. You want to borrow it?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll take the box set." And I watch all of them, and then the final one, Cult of Chucky, which wasn't on his set, well, it was still on Netflix, so I just watched that, and I watched them all in one day, and I was really surprised because I love the series now, and I put it off for so long, and I'm kind of sad. So
the only ones I can stand are the first two. I cannot watch the rest of them. The third one just went. It just didn't have the feeling of the first two. I didn't like it, and I tried watching Bride of Chucky, and that just that really just hit no buttons for me except all the wrong ones, and I just didn't trust them, any other ones after that.
well, if you don't like Bride of Chucky, you're probably not going to like Seed of Chucky, because
I guessed as much.
But I really do recommend Curse of Chucky and Cult of Chucky. They really are good, and they do go back to that original feel. The Curse of Chucky, it actually kind of has a bit of prequel to it leading up into the first one. At least flashback sequences that lead up into the first one. And then Cult of Chucky is a sequel of Curse, and I think it's a good one as well.
Alright, well, we're going to go ahead and cut it off for right now. We'll come back with another episode on another topic. We'll probably come back to collecting again because, well, there's all different types of subgenres of collecting that we can talk about, and we will.
Yeah, I am quite the hoarder, so I can talk about collections for a long time.
We will also discuss the difference between being a collector and a pack rat. Which, to be honest, I sometimes lose distinctions between the two. But until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and listen to more episodes and watch more episodes of us talking to you about things.
Eat some donuts.